Windsor, Ontario in Canada is often referred to as a suburb of Detroit, Michigan in the United States. It takes as little as 20 minutes to get from one to the other. Their automotive companies in particular have become part of the same ecosystem over the years. But as President Trump prepares a new wave of tariffs in the coming days, companies are left to navigate a tangled web of costs and choices. Our US correspondent Janelle Dumoulin filed this report from Windsor.
The Ambassador Bridge doesn't just connect the US and Canada. Rather, it links one automotive capital, Detroit, Michigan, to another, Windsor, Ontario. And their industries are tightly welded together. But Donald Trump's new 25% tariffs on imported cars and certain car parts are aimed at getting more production within the US border, leaving Windsor and its more than 90 automotive companies and suppliers out in the cold.
It feels like the death of somebody who's very close to us in the family, right? Because we are so intertwined.
Jonathan Azzopardi is the president of Laval Tools, which builds tools and equipment to make car parts. It's not yet completely clear how much auto suppliers and their suppliers in turn are going to feel the effects of the tariffs, as full details of the policy are still emerging. But pain is expected all along the supply chain.
People will have to take drastic steps to be able to manage that because nobody can swallow a 25% tariff. Not my clients, not me, nobody can. We may have to make decisions that we weren't prepared for, and we will likely have to pivot into something that we aren't today, right? A US entity, established in the United States, trying to figure out some way to fulfill those obligations on both sides of the border, because that's ultimately what President Trump wants.
And as companies in Windsor consider their options, it's hard for them to ignore that even more tariffs could be on the horizon. There's the other 25% duty on most Canadian imports that the White House levied in March, but delayed implementing. Bruce Lane makes car parts that cross the border back and forth several times for treatment and processing along many stages of manufacturing, before eventually landing in finished cars.
Our parts are on a large number of vehicles built. I call it used to be called the Big Three, General Motors, Chrysler, Ford, but now I call it the Group of Seven, because you got Hyundai in there, and Honda, and Toyota, and Nissan, those kind of things. And maybe on most all of them, we have one or two parts on the different vehicles that they make.
But on again, off again tariff policies have made it difficult to plan its expenses and to understand which tariff applies to what, whom, when, and where.
I would say not everybody understands who bears what cost.
He, too, is considering a pivot, not by moving to the U.S., but by concentrating on a new product line to sell domestically, modular steel frames for construction. He's hoping a bet on business, kept within Canada's borders, could eventually afford him some security long-term.
I worry for my grandchildren's futures, my children's futures. I just worry that it's going to be a knock on the economy, and there's going to be a lot of people affected by it. Everybody's going to be affected by it.
And it's this question around the future that everyone has in Windsor, as they look across the river to their American neighbor. It's about whether the economic ties will hold or whether tariffs will tear them apart.
Let's get more on this from Cassandra Sunt from DW Business. Welcome, Cassandra. So tariffs do now seem to be moving ahead. So what reactions have we been seeing?
Well, April 2nd is supposed to be Liberation Day, right, as Mr. Trump has said. And it seems that the traditional Liberation Day gift is not only tariffs, but it's also going to be plunging stock markets. We spoke a little bit earlier about the Nikkei leading some of these hefty equity market losses, but they're not alone, right? So we saw losses from the Hong Kong Hang Seng as well as Shanghai markets as well. And this index drop from the Nikkei actually put it into correction. It's dropped more than 10% from its high in December. But in general, the Nikkei is not alone here. The reaction seems to be from investors that they're nervous and they're trying to steel themselves. We actually saw a record high for gold as it seems to be a buffer going up against these tariff risks.
OK, so it's not necessarily about what he's done. It's the fact that there's all this uncertainty floating around.
It's the known unknowns. Right. There's just a lot we don't know right now.
What about the European reaction?
The European stocks also hit a 2-month low. We saw the Pan-European Stock 600 index fall 0.8% so far today. today, extending losses for a fourth straight session. And the high volatility index in the region has also seen a 2-week high. And so we're facing this aggressive tariff scenario, right? Like, just to put us in the Wayback Machine for a moment, not only are we thinking about these April 2nd tariffs, some details of which we're still waiting to be announced, but we've already seen tariffs on aluminum, steel, some autos already, and all goods coming from China into the United States. And that has actually prompted Goldman Sachs to lower its US and Euro area GDP forecast and add an additional quarter-point rate cut to its forecast for both the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank. But from the ECB president specifically, she said, that's Christine Lagarde, has said that the Trump trade war must prompt Europe to move towards independence, that this moment that Europe is facing is existential. And she said, in order to put Europe into an effective negotiating position, actually, they're going to have to show they're not going to roll over on this one.
OK. And so what is the likely next front in this trade war? What does that look like?
There's a lot to watch here. So the ECB has estimated, so these are the ECB's own numbers, that a Trump trade war could slash the Eurozone's economy by 0.3%. And if the Eurozone were to retaliate, we could see an economic cut by about 0.5 point. That's if the EU retaliates. Another round of auto tariffs are also expected in May, this time on auto parts coming into the United States. So that could affect even some domestic producers. And really what I'm going to be looking for are what countries, if any, are granted reprieves. Just yesterday, Mr. Trump was saying that these tariffs are still scheduled to hit all countries, but it's kind of unusual in the week that such a big economic policy could go into effect that we're still wondering, okay, what countries are these going to hit? So it's going to be interesting to see if even after the tariffs are implemented, any adjustments are made.
OK, thanks for talking us through that, Cassandra. Cassandra Sunt from DW Business. Thank you.